Well, first, good afternoon. Sorry about the delays here
Great.
technically. But my name is Eric Austin. I am a senior director at Procter Gamble, responsible for media innovation and citizenship innovation. We call ourselves brand builders here at the company, and we're always looking for ways to reinvent. And what we like to call it is constructively disrupt the marketplace in terms of reinventing ourselves. And one of the things that we constantly do that in media as the world's largest advertiser, but also we look for ways to reinvent citizenship and how we use citizenship to build the business. We like to call it a force for good and a force for growing the business. And we think this is a new era for growing brands. I'm from Cincinnati, Ohio, born and raised. Been here for most of my career, left a couple of times, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But I went to Tennessee State University, which is an HBCU, graduated with a computer science degree there. And before I left the campus, I interviewed at P&G and ended up coming back home to be with the family. And P&G called me a few weeks later saying, "Hey, can you come in for an interview?" And the rest has been history. So at Procter Gamble, we are a multinational advertiser. We got about 65 brands in the portfolio. We're headquartered in Cincinnati, Ohio, and we like to build superior brands that touch the consumer lives. I am an avid Bengals fan, so being from Cincinnati, so we have full expectations in going out to LA and bringing home this championship. That's my wife, Terica, on the left, and my two boys on the right. But they've been Bengal fans since birth. But I grew up as a Bengal fan, of course, being from Cincinnati, and just love the game itself. So we're excited. The city is electric right now in terms of what the team is doing. But let me pause here and just go a little bit deeper into my marketing career journey. I actually, when I said came out of school with a computer science degree, I started in IT. It was in more so the digital marketing space. They used to call it interactive marketing, where IT owned it. But I moved to marketing in 2005. P&G is pretty much a innovation, R&D, and a marketing company with the number of brands that we have. And I was in North America hair care and brand management. I worked on brands like Infusium, which we've now divested. I don't know if any of the ladies remember that brand, but also Pantene. And one of my favorite assignments was Head and Shoulders. So I was the guy that flew into New York to the NFL and wrote a brief to bring Troy Polamalu onto the business. And my marketing director at the time was like, "Well, who all did they have?" And I was like, "Well, it was Tom Brady, it was Adrian Peterson, and this guy named Troy Polamalu." She was like, "Well, I want Tom Brady." Of course, that's what she said. And we were like, "No, we need a proof point, which is the hair," right? So this is a time where Head and Shoulders was trying to move from a medicinal state into more cosmetic benefits. And we said the hair is the proof point, and the rest has been history. I'm sure people have seen the Troy Polamalu commercials there. And then I left there and promoted and went into global hair color. Was on the Wella business in our hair color organization. And that's what it was a global organization. And most of our Wella business was outside of North America. And this is when I really started to get a lot of global exposure, really in consumers' homes, learning about how they think about beauty in general, let alone hair color and how hair color fits into their lives. Very, very interesting role. Wella is formulated for more dark hair markets. So I spent a lot of time in the Middle East and Asia and Brazil markets and understand how women think about beauty and how it fits into their lives. I left that role and had an opportunity to move to Geneva, Switzerland to help run our global grooming business under the Braun brand. Fantastic experience, not only personally, but professionally. Had an opportunity to take my wife and my kids there as well. but had there in that role, I led our global digital and e-commerce business. Braun, a little bit more over 50% of that business, and it's a $1 billion brand, is coming from e-commerce. So it's a really high-end shavers, German engineering design in those shavers, but I had a really good experience there. I came back to the U.S. All roads lead back to Cincinnati, to corporate headquarters, and worked in our global skincare organization, really designing upstream initiatives for products like Olay Regenerist and Total Effects and a lot of the Olay cleansing businesses. So did that for a couple years and then moved into really the current organization that I'm in now, which is a global media organization. And this organization is responsible for the global strategies on our media asset. Media is definitely one of P&G's biggest assets that it has. We spend billions year over year in media. And it's the number 2 driver of our business. Of course, number 1 being the sales fundamentals and distribution, where you got to have physical availability of the product on the shelf. But the media gives consumers the mental availability of our products. So media plays a very critical role in that. So I've been doing that since 2016. I got promoted and they expanded my role and said, okay, we need you to develop these media strategies and platforms to make our media more efficient and effective. But we also want you to lead the charge in driving equality and inclusion throughout the media supply chain. So that's where my current role sits right now. Had a very fruitful career, 2 functions across 7 brands, 4 categories in 2 countries. So very pleased with the career. Has it been all great the whole time? No, but if you look at the body of work, I'm satisfied with the career and where I've been and the experiences that I've had. Let's talk a little bit about P&G. Like I said, we're about 65 brands, and we compete across 10 categories. As you can see across the top, these are just some of the leading brands in those categories. This is not the full portfolio, but you'll see the brands that lead in each of these categories here. And, P&G, given its scale, its global scale, we touch about 5 billion people on the planet every day, either with our products, our services, or our media. So we have a very influential role that we play in the ecosystem, and we tend to set the standards. Where we lead in a lot of different areas when it comes to media, and our mindset is that we want all boats rising. So some things are proprietary, and we want that competitive advantage, but a lot of things we do for the industry, so that the whole category and the marketplace grows. And if you understand the equation of how brands grow, it's not really focusing on your individual brand, it's focusing on growing the market. So when you grow the market, you grow, everybody's happy at that point, and it's sustainable. We don't want to get into a competition of, pulling share here, pulling share there, because it'll be a seesaw battle. So we focus on growing the markets, growing categories, and then growing brands. But with that, it's getting tough year over year to reach these consumers. I mean, media is highly fragmented across, so it's a challenge year over year. I mean, people are cutting cords. TV used to be our bread and butter in terms of how we reach, but ratings are down. People no longer have cable TV in their homes, so they're going into more subscription-based services or on your mobile phone. So media fragmentation is at an all-time high. So it's getting tough to break through. And our insights have to be a lot stronger in terms of how we connect with consumers. But we've been doing research over the years, and what we've seen is in our research is that more and more consumers have other considerations in their purchase decisions, and what that brand stands for. Do they stand for a societal or an environmental cause there? And so, and also it's harder to reach through these traditional mediums. So, we've kicked off internally the future of advertising, a world without ads. So what does that really mean? So this is an ongoing journey for us to understand, how do we delight consumers and elevate and provide a more superior brand experience through alternative means and methods. And that leads us to being a force for good and a force for growth. Not necessarily selfishly looking at pushing product benefits down to consumers, but also just really understanding who they are as a human. What are the things that that delights them outside of our products, and what are some of the issues that they face day in and day out. We also look at, you know, the supply chains and making sure that we can drive diversity, equality, and inclusion in that. And this is a new era for us in how we're going to be building our brands. At the highest levels of the company, we have a strategy called citizenship. It's focused on four focus areas. I mean, it's four focus areas: community impact, equality and inclusion, environmental sustainability, ethics, and corporate responsibility. And we can go deep on all of these areas, and we're really starting to make some headway across a lot of these core strategies. And this is actually trickling down to the 65 brands that we have, and all of our billion-dollar brands that we have in the portfolio, in moving out towards some of the other longer tail brands, has adopted either a social or societal cause as part of their brand ambition, because we truly believe that, you know, we can be a force for good and make it profitable and grow the business as well. But today, I really want to zero in on equality and inclusion. Like I said, I can go deeper in those other areas and sustainability, but today we're just going to focus on equality and inclusion. From a leadership perspective, there is commitment. Diversity is not only good for society, but it's good for business. It's important for us to make sure that diversity, equality, and inclusion is built into the fabric of the business versus being bolted on as a side project. You know, these areas are intrinsic, and there's action plans across all of our categories in terms of how do we drive equality, inclusion, and diversity throughout the organization. We were one of the first companies to be external in terms of what our numbers look like. And we're not perfect. I'm just here to say that, but you know, we are making progress here with 40% of the women of our workforce being women. Our board representation. I mean, we've been very vocal externally in some of the E&I initiatives, and we see consumers come back with us on the social networks and say, "I hear you, P&G, you're talking a good game, but who's on your board?" And I appreciate that, because it puts pressure on our leaders internally to continue to do more. But we have made some progress on our board. We're about 31% multicultural, 46% women, and we'll continue to get better there. I'm sorry about that. But we have set a goal, and we've been very vocal about it externally, that we want 40% multicultural representation across all levels of management in the US. That's a bold declaration. We haven't had that in previous years, but that is now a lighthouse goal, and our category leaders are working towards that goal. So with that, we want to use our voice as a force for good, and a force for growth. And this is translating, as I mentioned earlier, across a lot of our brands and our businesses. Has taken on this. We balance a lot of our advertising dollars now with product communication, and as well as equity and brand ambition communication. In terms of, you know, Olay wanting to face STEM, REO and sharing the load. I don't know if you've seen the John Legend commercial. That one's called Stinky Booty, where he's changing the diaper and he's singing along while he's changing the diaper, and also the infamous Gillette commercial that really was a buzz around the internet around redefining masculinity for men. So yeah, with all of these initiatives, we've been here for years. You know, I think someone earlier had talked about some of the efforts in our Olympic messaging in supporting moms and stepping up and addressing bias. So we've been doing this for years, and our brands are getting more savvy in how to connect with consumers beyond product benefits. All right. Here is an example of that. And of course, I can go through many of our brand portfolios, but here's an example of how one of our brands is bringing equality and inclusion to life by addressing bias in the algorithms that exist across the internet.
We have to face that beauty is in the eye of the coder. Search for beautiful skin, beautiful face, beautiful woman. Where are the women of color? Where are the women that look like me, or you, or you? Who gets to be beautiful online is decided by code and society. And women of color, we're being left out. That's why Olay wants to double the number of women in STEM. Because to face coded bias, we need more women leading and coding in our beautiful ideas.
Celebrate her features, my features, our features.
Recognize my skin in all its brilliant shades.
Help us and post using hashtag #DecodeTheBias on Instagram or Twitter to send 1,000 girls to Code Camp. It's time we decode the bias, because together we can face anything.
So with that, on that Olay commercial, I think they had a brilliant insight in matching product benefits to a brand ambition. And one of the things that Olay is doing, they committed $1 million to HBCUs last year in women in STEM, and they just, I think last week, committed the second $1 million. So they're now $2 million in terms of supporting women to double the women in STEM across the industry. With Olay being definitely a science brand, there's a lot of science in our skincare products. This is one that builds the business, right? We can get talented and diversity into our workforce. It's going to be good. We want to represent the consumers that we serve every day. So now I want to move to a racial equality. Here, we got a number of initiatives that I'm going to go through here, and also give you the journey that we've been on. In 2017, we declared an initiative to step up and win with African Americans. We recognized a share gap that we had across many of our categories of household penetration among African Americans versus the general market. So with that focus, we just didn't want to jump in and go after these consumers with product benefits, but really have authentic connections. And once we can connect with their hearts authentically, then we can come in and draw more affinity, and that can lead to purchase intent and start to close the business. And we've made progress since 2017 across a lot of our businesses. But in 2017, one of the things that we wanted to go do was really address bias in the industry. So we launched The Talk, and I'm not sure if some folks who've seen this film, but it is a conversation that a mother has with her kids before they enter society. And we really wanted to highlight this because it's mind-opening and a good conversation starter around some of the things that African-American consumers have to deal with day in and day out. And it was enlightening to a lot of Caucasian families.
Who said that?
The lady at the store.
That is not a compliment.
Listen, it's an ugly, nasty word, and you are going to hear it. Nothing I can do about that. But you are not going to let that word hurt you. You hear me?
There are some people who think you don't deserve the same privileges just because of what you look like. It's not fair. It's not. Remember, you can do anything they can.
Difference is you gotta work twice as hard and be twice as smart.
Come straight home after practice. You got your ID? Yeah. In case they stop you.
How's your review?
We're good.
You good?
Yeah,
You see?
We're good.
Okay. Good. Now, when you get pulled over,
I'm a good driver. Okay?
baby,
Don't worry.
this is not about you getting a ticket. This is about you not coming home.
I'm gonna be okay. Right? Okay.
It's not fair. But you keep showing up.
You are not pretty for a black girl. You are beautiful, period. Okay? Don't ever forget that.
I'll pause there to see if there's any questions from the team. I know I've been doing a lot of talking here, so let me pause. How are we tracking?
We're tracking great in terms of time, Eric.
Okay.
I just want to say, this is Antoinette again from Medgar Evers. That was just so powerful. And I thank Procter & Gamble for just taking the time to understand and want to understand what impacts people, brown and black folk here. I'm sitting over here almost tearing up, right? Because I have a son who's 19 years old, and these are some of the concerns that I face. So to know that P&G is also on top of it and looking through this lens, it just lightens my heart. So thank you so much.
Awesome. No, we're very proud of that. This was one a film where we've had a lot of debate on internally, and and you'll see some of the other films really getting top-down support, CEO on down, in terms of really taking a stand on some certain issues. We use our influence to put a message out there. So with the hope of generating some dialogue to create change.
Eric, you used the word debate. There's nothing debatable about this film. This is our lives. This is how we live. This is what we do with our children. There's no debate to be had.
Well, it's a debate from a business perspective, right? Okay. Whether this is, early on in this journey, we were, we got naysayers internally to say, hey, why can't we just focus on selling Tide? Why do we have to get in and start? This could be a distraction. Yes, you have those, but overwhelmingly, our leaders was like, no, this is the right thing to go do. And this is at a time where we're still playing with the identity, a shift in the identity of the company. This is very early on in some of our citizenship strategies where we wanted to go. So there was some risk that was taken, and it played out very well. Even in the Black community, we took some heat for this, because one of the things that was missing from this film was the Black man. Okay. And some of our Black leaders said, hey, we're reinforcing the stereotype by not having the Black man in the home. So overall, great. There was some debate and some discussion, but we took a risk, and it panned out very well. This film has won an Emmy. It's won Cannes Lion Awards. It's been used for in HR organizations. So we're super proud of it and what we've accomplished.
As you should be. It's amazing. Like Antoinette, I'm choked up about it. And I've seen this so many times, but it really strikes home. It does.
It really
Thank you.
does, you know,
Yes.
and my son has autism, so that's another variable on top of him being a Black man in this society. So the more companies that are sensitized to the needs of Black and brown children and are aware, I think it's just benefits beyond our imagination.
Awesome. Well, let's go. We got some more to share here. In 2019, we pivoted from that, and in 2019, as I mentioned, we wanted to continue to double down and appeal to different groups within the African American audience, and one of those is Black men. And we realized that Black men has not been positively portrayed in media over the years, and those stereotypes can lead to biases, and those biases can lead to unintended consequences, whether they're conscious or unconscious. So we partnered with BET and did a Black man study to really unearth a lot of insights and really understand the Black man holistically. And it was a very, very in-depth study. But we partnered with the Saturday Morning Group, who's a collection of Black creative executives across the industry to pull together the Look program. And we're super happy. This takes that even bolder step into the direction of addressing bias. So this was a two-sided story that was inspired by reality, with each scene recounting the experience of many men of color in America. This campaign broadens the narrative to boldly show both sides of bias, the cause and the effect of it. And our hope is that we all gain a perspective that will lead to a deeper, richer conversation and understanding of human behavior as it relates to bias. The film opens doors on so many important conversations about racial bias and aspects of life, and has been used by countless schools and education partners to foster the dialogue and understanding. Let's see here. We'll get through there. So what the activation plan on this, when we launched this, the intent was not to really put this in broad media on linear TV or a huge big digital push. It was intended for more community conversations. Leveraging this short film to raise awareness and understanding that that bias does persist in America, and encourage people of all backgrounds to show up for one another in the quest to end all forms of bias. While the look is one story, we recognize that there are many other more stories and experiences out there. This video alone in no way represents a complete solution, but we do hope that it can spark and seed change by driving dialogue and empathy. And again, this film has been used across schools and universities. We even had advocates like John Legend behind it as well in the development. So we shot this film, and the background of it, we shot each one of those scenes probably 15 times or more, really going from an unconscious look to more of an intentional racist look. And we probably edited this film probably 30 times to really get it right, because this was a bold statement that we wanted to get it right, and we put it into testing. We've partnered with influencers before we launched it, essentially Black Twitter in New York, in focus groups, really trying to get an authentic understanding of, is this an accurate portrayal? So we're super proud of this. I think we got it right. And it is a conversation starter in terms of how do we start to be aware of our unconscious bias, and on the other end of the spectrum of how do we talk about the look so that we can how do we talk about the look so we can end the bias? So we're going to move on. Was any questions on the look before I move on?
Hey, I got just one question, Eric. Just help frame. So it's 2017, 2019. We haven't got 2020, which is going to take off again here. You guys have now created all of this stir in. You're out in front of a lot of brands. You got to think about the time. I want the audience to put yourself in the context. This isn't 2020 or 2021. This is still 2017. It's not 2000 or 1985 either, but it's 2017. They put this thing. How are your numbers as you start to look at the product benefits? Brands are starting to switch this to brand ambition. We know social responsibility at some point has to catch on, and the business has to come, because this has to make sense, because your board wants to deliver the good to shareholders. How are things going in the businesses before 2020 gets here relative to this work?
That's a great question. I think we were a little bit ahead of our time with this film. The bias existed in society. We saw that very early on. You're right. This was not in context of the riots and everything else. But it is one that we want to address the needs of our consumers. This actually, the insights that I mentioned, the research we did with BET, was fueling our businesses in terms of how to approach, even in the commercial realm, African-American consumers. So we took one angle out of that research, but our brands and our businesses took the other insights that came from that research. So we work tandem. We work at the corporate level at a corporate voice, and then our brands have to work in their equity voice, if you will. Like Old Spice has a certain tone and a certain voice.
Yeah.
So we work in tandem here. There's a lot of things we'll say much bolder at a corporate level than what a brand will say on a business level. But what we want is consumers to take away that this is all a family of P&G brands, and we have a very distinct point of view on citizenship and how we want to end bias. Hopefully that helps. Now, coming out of that session we had that stepping up session. Out of that, we started to look at our product portfolio. And that was one of the reasons for the insight, is that we turned MBIB from My Black is Beautiful from a commercial initiative to now hair care products. We actually went out and acquired Bevel. Okay. We put senior leaders in certain positions. You also got to realize we're also seeing the browning of America. I don't know if you guys realize, but the census report that just came out, 100% of the U.S. population growth came from multiculturals. So we see this trend happening where our product portfolio now has to address the needs of our consumer base. So and what I shared about our numbers, we've had our first Black woman now, Monica Turner, who's the president of North America Sales. One of the biggest positions that we have in the company is now being ran by a Black woman. Olay, for years, which didn't have a lot of Black women in their advertising, is now being ran by a Black woman. And you can see some of the initiatives now come out. That STEM initiative, that video I showed you was introduced by that Black woman. So you got to have people at the table in place to drive systemic change. I mean, we can do the advertising, but if there's no one in the makeup of the brand that's representing the consumer, then you're not going. You may get some stories and Black folks in the film, but they may not be authentic. You see what I mean? And they may not. You're going to be limited in your insights if you don't have the right representation at the table. So hopefully that answered your question a little bit.
Right on.
All right, you guys see the screen again?
Yes.
All right. So now we move into 2020, and boy, we know that's been a year. It brought the twin pandemics of COVID-19 and racism front and center in the U.S. I don't want to go into details. You guys have all lived this as a matter of 2 years ago. But you know that, what led to this protest is a list of violence against Black people in the U.S. What wasn't new was the iPhone footage that was undeniably a crime in George Floyd's death. In fact, in June 2020, protesters had bipartisan support. The Black Lives Matter movement, which had begun in 2013, has gained acceptance across color and political lines. We at P&G asked ourselves, in this midst of turmoil and civil unrest and a pandemic, what can we do to unite America amidst all of this unrest? How can we use our influence and spark change? And again, we did the look in the talk in previous years. One of the things we did, we doubled down. This is when the look became public. We had the look on Oprah. Oprah talked about it in her special. We put a lot of media dollars behind the look and bringing it above ground in linear TV to really spark that conversation. So that was early on in the protest, but we felt that we needed a different message. We didn't want to just hang on the look there. We needed something special, one that would speak directly to the white community. As you can see, the white community was getting involved in stepping up for the Black Lives Matter movement. So this is what we launched in June of 2020. Yeah, I'll stop there and just give you a little bit more context here. what sparked really that film, a lot of our leaders are saying, hey, we've been doing the look, the talk. We're at a point now where we just see flat out racism, and we need something. We need a different message. Black people can't shoulder this burden alone. And it got to a point where, you know, a lot of our Black employees were coming in and saying, I can't do Zoom calls right now. I mean, you guys, everyone in this call probably been there when that George Floyd event happened, when all the civil unrest happened. It's very difficult to come to work and interact with your colleagues when there's so much unrest happening in the marketplace. So the company felt that we had to do something, and it had to be a different message. So that was a step up message to the white community to act. You know, when your life matters, you have power, you have privilege. And, you know, it's time to, you know, it's not enough to be anti-racist. You have to do more, right? So this film was, we put this above line, and this was out in linear, again, using our influence and our partners and our platforms to really get this message out as well. And this is one where, you know, my CMO, before we launched it, the day before, sent a message to our Global Leadership Council, really stating why we had to go put this message in the marketplace.
Eric, question is excellent. First of all, where did that spot run? Where did it air?
This one, this is in the June timeframe. You recall Oprah having a town hall where she was bringing senior leaders. It aired there. Oprah personally called my CMO, Mark Pritchard, and said, I want this film. I'm going to air it. So it aired on the Discovery Network. We've aired it during the BET Awards across CBS, Viacom, BET networks. And we put a lot of digital dollars behind it as well.
I have a question on that. I am into the IMC field myself. I've seen the talk ad in the past, and I've even done a research on the talk ad, a textual analysis. This is the first time I'm seeing this particular stuff, because the same question Ms. Hudson asked, like, it was never in the mainstream media. We never saw it anywhere, because these are the kind of stuff that could be thought-provoking. Yes, I'm in an HBCU, but coming from PWIs where I've been in the past, this kind of stuff really needs to be out there. If you guys have done something like this, it needs to be like, let everybody see it. And please, I would love a link. Is it on YouTube? Can I
it is,
that on YouTube?
Yeah, it's on YouTube. You can go to pg.com. It's there as well.
pg.com, okay.
pg.com, or you can go to P&G YouTube channel. It's sitting out there as well.
Because
you know,
this would be great to use, because I teach race and media at the graduate level, and this could really tell a whole lot. All I did was use the talk ad, which was the one I've seen, and it really resonated with my students, and that really adds a lot of. But this is taking it the next level, and I'm glad I even came, even though it's just 30 minutes. But this alone is enough for my whole day. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, let's continue. So we moved to 2021. We're thinking, you know, it's going to be a better year for COVID, but we were wrong. But we wanted to pivot. We wanted to get into more action. We've used our voice to spark a conversation, to drive unity, but now we wanted to double down in ramping up our work, but focusing on where P&G can make the biggest difference in representing people of color in advertising and in media, which is our bread and butter. One of the biggest systemic inequities is that fewer than 6% of all advertising, film, and content are created by people of color, leading to a lack of accurate portrayal of the Black community, and why bias is continually reinforced. On top of that, only 1.4% of US ad dollars is spent on AA audiences and AA Black-owned media. So, again, there's a disparity throughout the media supply chain in creators, in Black stories, and on the media networks.
Excuse me, Eric, would you repeat both of those statistics, please?
So if you look at less than 6% of all advertising, films and content are created by people of color. And I can go even further, is that less than 1% of creators and directors of those film and television industries are Black women. So we got a disparity of creators in the ecosystem, and those creators can't create authentic Black stories. So there's a disparity of stories. But on top, the Black-owned and operated media platforms is only seeing 1.4% of the total U.S. ad dollars. So this is why you see the Byron Allens and the Puffys and the Revolts of the world being very vocal in the marketplace about ad dollars flowing to those Black-owned and operated media networks. So this is why we launched Widen the Screen. It's an expansive content creation, talent development, and partnership platform that enables increased representation, inclusion of Black creators across advertising, film, and the media industry. And it expands the Black-owned and operated media ecosystem. Our immediate focus is on Black creators and media companies. And we'll expand into Hispanic and APA in later years. So we'll reapply this model, but the focus really is on addressing the systemic inequalities throughout the media supply chain and across creators, stories, as well as the media. Hopefully that answered your question.
Yes, it did. I think I was just shocked. Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's real. And I don't know if you follow the media and advertising industry, you're getting a lot of companies stepping up their investment in Black-owned and operated media, particularly with GM and Target now stepping up. The Widen the Screen program is founded on a call to action on creating content to widen the screen so that we can widen our view by portraying the full joy and beauty and vastness of Black life, not simply reinforcing commonly held stereotypes of struggle, trauma, or even extreme excellence. The Black story is usually told into two extremes, whether it is extreme struggle or extreme stardom and excellence. But we were missing so much of the Black normalcy in the middle. Those positive Black stories of joy, resilience, there. So that's the essence of Widen the Screen, is to fill the pipeline with Black creators, tell stories of love, joy, and resilience, and not necessarily in those two extremes, and then increase our investments in Black-owned and operated media. So this is our anthem film I'm about to show you, Widen the Screen. We created this about a year ago, and we debuted it at the NAACP Awards.
If you think you know what happens next, ask yourself why. These are the Black stories we've been shown. A narrow view that limits our understanding. But there's so much more to see. life. Let's widen the screen so we can widen our view.
Pause there for quick reactions or questions.
I see y'all picked up and finally got the brothers going, huh? Put some of the guys in there from the earlier films, huh? That was good.
Eric, there is a question in the chat. My students asked if these campaigns are for just business making decisions to get people of color to buy your product or to get the society to change.
First and foremost, we want to come from an authentic place, and we want society to change. But again, we need to be a force for growth so that we can be a force for good. When your business is doing well, you can extend out and do things that are good for society. I mean, we have a fundamental belief that brands and corporations are going to be the biggest force for societal change. And for P&G, as the world's largest advertiser, we have a responsibility in terms of how much media and content we pump into the ecosystem. If we get that equation wrong, we reinforce stereotypes, right? So we saw disparities throughout the supply chain, but we're acting on it. Now, all of this, in turn, will draw tighter and better affinity amongst African Americans to P&G. I've been in focus groups. I mean, I'm the marketing lead on all of these films. So I've sit in the focus groups in terms of how consumers are reacting to these films, and it gives them a greater appreciation for what the company is trying to do. And I mentioned before, we moved from talking about it to being about it. So what you're about to see in the next couple slides, I only got a couple slides left, is we're actually putting our money where our mouth is in terms of how we're addressing the systemic inequalities throughout the media supply chain.
See if we can get Dee in for one quick question.
Eric, I teach social media marketing, and a lot of what we talk about is how we've moved from traditional marketing, where you can do a film this long, to how do you catch millennials and younger people who want to see it in 30 seconds and a minute. So what kind of things are you doing to bring that message to social media where it's palatable to millennials and younger people?
Great question. This is a 2-minute film. And, this film was created before we even went into the brief. We said, okay, we want to see all Black people on the screen. The creative director was Black, right? The whole camera crews were multicultural and Black. This is a 2-minute anthem, but we got cut downs all the way to social media, 5-second tags that lead to the broader. So you can go to pg.com/widen the screen. And see the full story in the background, but we got social. We've launched. This was one of. Let me get a show of hands. Just like who's seen this film before? Okay, so this one we put a lot of money behind this one. Here again, on all the major networks. There's a 2-minute version, a 60-second version. There's a 10-second cut down, and even a 5-second for some of the social channels. But we had a holistic program that we launched this campaign up under.
Okay. Thank you. I would like to show this in my social media class, and I just told them that you can't do 2-3 minutes in social media. So.
Well, I mean, you notice on all of these films, these are very touchy subjects that you got to get right, and I don't want to be constrained to what Facebook and Instagram tells me what to do. The more important thing is to get the message. Right. So that was the first thing we communicated on the brief was let's use the time to get the right message across, because this was the launch film. So we can get into cut downs, but we spent money on forcing this 2-minute view on major networks. And then in the later months, we cut it down to get more efficiency out of the media buys so that we can extend the reach. But what's more important, the look was a minute and 90, was 90, I think it was 90 seconds, almost 2 minutes long. But when you're telling these stories, people will watch them, right? So these are more important messages, and it resonated very well with all age groups. And we wanted to do it right. And you heard Mahershala Ali on the voiceover there as well. So we wanted to make sure it had stopping power and it was recognizable.
Eric, there's a question in the chat from Ed. Ed, do you want to just?
Sure, yeah. So P&G has a ton of resources at its disposal to do this work. What advice would you give to smaller companies that want to engage in conversations like this?
I think you start at the grassroots level there. One, you got to start small. You can't jump out there and start talking about issues around societal change if you don't have the credibility. Just like the question came in earlier, is like, hey, are you just doing this to sell products? More importantly, you can get it wrong if you don't have the experience. And you've seen brands who tried to jump out here, get it wrong, and there's a complete backlash. Bath and Body Works last week got it wrong, right? Heineken got it wrong. So you got to start small, be authentic, make sure that you have the right people at the table developing the program so that you can get authentic insights, right? So, we had, Black professionals at the table for reaching Black consumers. We would do the same thing for Hispanic and APA. Not saying it's limited to that, but you got to have a diverse makeup in your creative teams to really get to some of the true insights. We always say creativity loves diversity. So, you're going to get some of your best creative ideas if you have a diversity of thought in developing it. All right, so let's talk about a little bit of the proof points. We talked about we wanted it all to be about action. We launched the Queen Collective, and this is our signature program to address multicultural representation in the media supply chain. So this is a collaboration with Queen Latifah and Flavor Unit Entertainment, as well with Tribeca Studios, to open the doors for emerging women directors and their crews through mentorship, production support, and production. So these are more up and coming directors. We identified those and we paid for full production of content that supports the Widen the Screen initiative. And we're using our influence across media platforms to get these films distributed at no cost to these film directors. So we are committed to filling the pipeline with Black creators and getting positive Black stories. And our brands are getting behind these and putting their advertising assets around this programming content. So we've been doing this for 3 years. We've produced 8 documentary style productions, including, Ballet After Dark, If There Was Light, Gloves Off, Tangle Roots. And this latest season is Game Changer, which you see Tanya on the far right. She's a Black coder. So Olay supported this one in STEM. Black Birth, which highlights the disparities of Black maternal health. Pampers is really all over this, supporting it, and going to blow this program up a bit more. Grace's Song here about a young woman who aspires to be a master pianist. My Black is Beautiful is sponsoring that. And then Change the Name, which is a story about a school in Chicago and young kids looking to change the name of a park that's been named after a racist slave owner. And this one was sponsored by P&G. But yeah, these are the stories that we want to tell, and our brands want to be around. And it not only provides audiences for our brands to advertise around, but we're putting positive content into the ecosystem.
Queen Collective is a collaboration between P&G and Tribeca Studios.
Having a Black woman directing is not something that we get to see very often.
So we met with P&G.
They decided to pick your film.
Oh my God.
Wait, what? It's gonna premiere where?
It's all on you. Pressure's on you, girl.
There has to be a real intention of change. If you welcome someone into the room and then put them in the corner, it's the same as if they weren't there.
We also created a platform for more experienced Black creators and filmmakers in partnership with Saturday Morning. This is the group that developed the look, and Tribeca Studios. We created, 4 short scripted films, each told in 8 minutes and 46 seconds. This was reclaiming the time that it took to take a Black man's life, in spirit of George Floyd. And we wanted to tell stories, life-affirming stories of joy and beauty and love and resilience. These films here, what you see is Cupid's, Pearl and Henry, and Slow Pulse and She Dreams at Sunrise. On that last animation, She Dreams at Sunrise is about a grandson who's taking care of his grandmother who has Alzheimer's, told in a very beautiful story, and it's now up for not only an Oscar, but it's being nominated at the NAACP Image Awards later this month. These films are all widening opportunities for hundreds of creators and helping them expand the size of the ecosystem by producing more programming content to build larger audiences for our brands and create additional ad inventory that we can buy. For example, we've made all the films available across Queen Collective and 846 Films. We made them available to our Black owned and operated media companies so that they can create more programming opportunities, so they can create audiences, so we can invest more in their platforms. And I can't say this is simply short of amazing. I'm excited to work on this program. We're now developing strong partnerships with the top 50 Black owned and operated partners: Central City, TV One, Urban One, Essence, Ebony, Allen Media Group, Rock the Bells with LL Cool J, all with longstanding partnerships. Of course, what we have with BET and OWN, but it's incredibly rewarding because we're coming up with entirely new ideas, new programming content to really not only change the game, but address a lot of the systemic barriers in the ecosystem. So with that, all of this, I kind of wrap up and end, and I just showed you just the racial equity component of some of our corporate programs and what we're doing. But P&G is one of the most admired companies in the world in many ways. Here are just a few of the recognitions we received over this past year. They reflect that, P&G's community efforts, what we're calling citizenship, is built into how we do business. So there you have it. These are just a few examples we're taking to raise the bar on citizenship and build the best brands for all consumers. We want accurate portrayals and insightful and relevant and authentic stories that fuel conversations and fuel culture. I hope that this presentation has been inspiring to many of you, and hope that you can it opens your mind to how you can operate inclusively and drive progressive change in culture and society, while also being a force for business growth. So we believe that corporations can be a force for good and a force for growth. So that's all I had to share with you today. I know it was a little long, but hopefully it was a little insightful and informative. We got a few minutes left. I'm happy to take some questions if there's any out there.
Got a couple.
I don't have a question. I just wanted to say thank you. This was fantastic. I feel really inspired about going to talk to my students, and this is the stuff that they need to hear and that they care about. So I appreciate you sharing this with us. And unfortunately, I have to go to a meeting, but thank you, everyone.
All right. Dr. Bassi, you got a
Yeah, thank you so much. It was a great presentation. I think we all feel good after watching this presentation, inspired and motivated, and it was just awesome. Now, let me ask you a technical question now. So we talked about all the reasons why, the motivations for, and the processes involved in creating these new initiatives. So you talked about citizenship as a concept, or as a paradigm or framework that you're using to sort of cover all of these initiatives. Now, when it comes to marketing performance, evaluating how well things are being done, have you added new metrics to your performance evaluations as marketers, in addition to everything else you've been using? So today, now that we know we need to take into consideration these other variables that concern societal values, so how do you sort of insert those in your evaluation processes, or more specifically, budget allocation? So do you have, because you mentioned that sometimes even leaders inside your company would say, no, maybe this doesn't work. So how do you convince that this is actually adding value to your stakeholders?
Yep, great question. I'm at a corporate level, so we create the framework and the strategies, and they trickle down into the brand. So we create the frameworks and the proof points that these type of inclusive-based marketing works for your business. So we understand we got several brands with gaps of African Americans, of household penetration gaps versus general market. So there's a business opportunity. There's a $500 million business opportunity there. So brands are looking to market better, more insightful, in a more relevant and resonant way to African Americans. So we're giving them the frameworks, and that will be addressed on the business side of things. Now, I've probably done 30 of these presentations to recruiting, because this is what the new students want to hear. They want to hear about, what's your equality inclusion goals, what's your sustainability goals. So in that last slide I showed of all the awards, you'll see of how many accolades P&G is getting in terms of admired companies. So it's helping not only our recruiting, but we're also seeing the increased scores in our retention surveys and our employee satisfaction of remaining at P&G. So there's a business component down into the individual categories and brands, and giving them models and frameworks on how to do inclusive marketing. But there's also at the corporate level, how we're seeing the numbers in terms of our reputation in the industry, as well as our recruiting and retention of employees.
I wanted to thank you. I'm from Harriston State University, and I have 3 of my students here. So thank you, Eric, for bringing that to Harriston State University. Thank you.
My pleasure.
I would love to follow up on my previous questions in terms of if this is just for the business sake or is to change the society. When I looked at the media you targeted, they are mostly Black-owned media you're partnering with. So my research cut across race and IMC. So looking at it from a race point, most of these are not on the mainstream media, apart from the talk ad that is being seen everywhere. If this could be on the mainstream media, definitely your talk about trying to be a change in the society, and not just to target Black-owned people, Black African Americans or people of color to buy your purchase, that would resound more, because these are quality work produced by people of color. These are works that definitely tells a bigger picture, like the widescreen one. Wow, I was blown. These are some of the things I would love to see out there. And while we're speaking, one of my papers I did with talk was acknowledgement of the mummified elephant in the room, which is about race. Now, I could see that there is a whole lot of it out here that if it's in the mainstream media, it's going to change the talking point. Not just targeting those Black-owned media, because that's where every African-American person, people of color go to. But I love your presentation. They are great. I can see P&G is actually trying to make some changes, but now we need to see it out there in the limelight so that everybody gets to see it, and let's know what the brand stands for, not only for recruitment purposes or to keep your workers or to sell to a particular group of people. That's what I feel, though.
Yeah.
But thanks,
hey, Elliot and Van, I'm happy to stay longer, so I can stay longer to answer some questions, if you will. But I think that's a great question. One of the things that I may have not went deeper on, but there's two targets, particularly to widen the screen. There's an industry message, and then there's a consumer component. And we're trying to straddle both. If you're in the industry professional, you probably have seen Widen the Screen many times. It's been covered, but the intent is to encourage other companies to step up and address the systemic inequalities in the media supply chain and the ecosystem. And we believe we've done that because our goal is to be the #1 advertiser of Black-owned and operated media. Okay. Honestly, the bar is really not that high given the budgets that we have. So we have to get more corporations, more advertisers involved to do that. Now, we can max out the dollars at Black-owned and operated media because the inventory is just not there. That's why we're filling the pipeline with creators and story content and giving it to those Black-owned and operated partners. Essentially, it's the soap opera model. P&G created the soap operas many years ago. The reason we created the soap operas was so that we can put commercial ads in between at the commercial breaks. So we own Guiding Light, All My Children, and all of that. And when you went to commercial, you saw a P&G commercial. It was an opportunity to do an ad. We're doing the same thing with the Black-owned and operated media partners. We're investing in programming content that's going to create change and consistent with our brand equities. And when they go to commercial break or in the pre-roll, if you're on digital, we're going to show a P&G ad. So it's a flywheel effect, right? We're increasing investments. We're putting responsible media in the ecosystem, and P&G is getting a benefit out of it and growing its brands.
Yeah.
And we want, and since we've been doing that, General Motors has stepped up with a commitment. Target has stepped up with a 5% commitment. On down the line of all these major advertisers stepping up to invest in Black-owned and operated media. If you ask Revolt right now, they just put an article in Ad Age saying business is good. They're maxing out their inventory. So I think we want to lead and have all boats rise by getting the industry to step up. And then also at the same time, we're getting consumers to recognize the good that we're doing, and they're having stronger affinity to our brands.
Yeah, I think this was great, Eric. What I also like to leave the audience too, as we leave, is that how incredibly difficult to have this kind of movement in an organization, like P&G is over the years. I'm a half a generation behind Eric. Spent 30 years in 2 other big companies, and it's very difficult to get to the point where you can pull all those things out. The big rub that you're going to have in most of your classes is the constant battle. Are you trying to change society, or are you trying to grow your profits? What I think P&G's done is try to strike a great balance between that. We can actually grow our business if we do some good and be responsible for it. And them just being a leader in the industry tries to help everybody else. If we had everybody else just take a little sliver, I think we'd be in a much better space. And you probably see a lot more of this across mainstream, Emmanuel, as you talk. Frederica, you want to have the last question?
Yes, sir. Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm actually in Dr. Nadoma's class, so thank you, Dr. Nadoma, for inviting us on here, and thank you, Mr. Eric. I just had a question because I'm an undergraduate student. I attend the illustrious Harrison State University. And what advice can you give undergraduates majoring in marketing? Because I love to talk and stuff like that, but this has opened my eyes to a lot of stuff that I didn't know.
No, I mean, marketing is such a broad field there, and it's changed. My advice is continue to explore all the different assets of marketing, whether it's at a company, CPG, where you're doing product marketing, you're at an agency that's doing creative work, or you're doing media. You know, I would have wish I would have made the move to marketing a lot sooner there. But my advice to a student is really look at across the spectrum and understand what type of work you want to go do, because the space is so broad. And then once you make that decision, start to look for avenues to get closer to the work. Find mentors. Look for internship opportunities that can get you along the path, right? So there's definitely a demand for marketers and brand builders out there, and particularly those of color. And I think you're at the intersection. You're a Black woman, and you're Black and you're a woman. So I think you're going to be in high demand. But find a discipline area within the marketing space and go after it, and find mentors that can talk to you about how to get into the space.
What a great way to end in terms of that advice, and appreciate Eric. You are awesome. You're a professor right here. I mean, you just did everything with no notes. I mean, like that's like you just auditioned and you're an adjunct. So we'll definitely look for that. So
yeah, I apologize, a little choppy there, but I just had to go from memory on these slides.
So smooth. So awesome job. I know that there's been a lot of chatter about how do we get in touch with Eric? How do we keep in touch? Where's this presentation? So like in an email that we send to all of you, you'll get the video link, plus like Eric will be there. And obviously he has, I think, like 3 jobs at P&G. So we appreciate him carving this out, and I'm sure he'd be happy to connect with you. I'd also like to say thanks to Van as well for moderating and sort of being sort of this bridge between academia and industry. I think he always keeps it real, and appreciate him being a part of this and steering us together. So thank you, Van. And to all of you for being a part of this. You know, we will continue these kinds of events. One where we do it, we kind of have professors, and then we have students, and then we should look at a mix, because we definitely want to keep up the engagement. We just don't want to overwhelm you so much. But appreciate you guys, engaging with us today. So with that, again, say thank you to everybody. Eric, I don't know if you want to say any final words.
No, I appreciate the opportunity here to present. So I love this space, and I appreciate the questions. And every time I get something from the crowd and the energy to help sharpen our thinking going forward. So I really appreciate it for the opportunity to present some of the work here.